Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the Toronto Reactor. We have joined today by Hamida Rebai. She's a Microsoft MVP and amazing, and I'll let her introduce herself, but thank you so much for joining us. This session will be on containerizing microservices with Service Fabric, and I'll let Rebai take it from here.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you are fine. Thank you for inviting me to present this session. I'll present today a session about Service Fabric and microservice. So what you will learn today, the basic of Service Fabric, local deployment and remotely in the cloud. As mentioned, I am Microsoft MVP in developer technologies. And if you have any questions during the presentation, you can use the chat option on the right. We will answer in the end. And if you want to join me after this session, you can use this email or you can follow me on Twitter. So we will talk at the beginning about the advantages of microservices compared to the monolithic applications. Then we will give an overview about the environment preparation or to start the Service Fabric demos. In a changing market, one of the main challenges of maintaining the competitiveness of digital businesses remains IT agility. However, in their current state, computer systems are struggling to adapt to their latest technological developments such as mobility or the Internet of Things and to their new requirements. With a large number of dependencies of services linked to the life cycle of an IT project, each modification of the source code of a classic monolithic application can destabilize it in maintenance. For this reason, companies have resorted to more optimized, scalable architecture, ensuring continuous availability and less costly in terms of research conception and in particular oriented microservices. The change is essential facing the aggressive competition and in particular that of startups which are not yet congested by rigid infrastructures. Before talking about microservices, we need to understand the difference between the traditional application approach and the microservices application approach. Any application is built as a collection of services, can be developed, tested, versioned, deployed, and scaled. For monolithic application, scale is done by the application on multiple server or virtual machines. But for microservices, scale is done by deploying each independently with multiple instances across servers or VM. I highly recommend seeing more details about microservices on Martin Fowler's website I mentioned in the bottom here. Microservices are similar to Hives. Within a hive, thousands of bees coexist and help each other for a simple common goal, the survival of the colony. The queen, the workers, and the drones each have their particularity and must therefore assume very distinct tasks. When developing a server-side application, you can start it with a modular, hexagonal, or layered architecture, which consists of different types of components or layers. Here, in monolithic application approach, we have 4 layers that start by the presentation layer, that is your user interface layer. This can be a web or mobile or desktop application. The service layer is responsible for handling HTTP requests and responding with either HTML or JSON XML for web service APIs, for example. The business logic layer is the core of our application. Business logic is in this layer. The database access objects are responsible for the access to database. Here we can talk about SQLDB or NoSQLDB. Despite having a logical modular architecture, the application is packaged and deployed as a monolith. Monolithic applications are more of a single complete package having all the related needed components and services encapsulated in one package. But if we see here, microservice application approach, the idea is really simple. It consists to split your application into a set of smaller interconnected services instead of building a single monolithic application. Each microservice is a small application that has its own hexagonal architecture consisting of business logic along with various adapters. Some microservices would expose a REST, RPC, or message-based API, and most services consume APIs provided by other services. Other microservices might implement a web user interface, and microservices are deployed independently with their own database per service. So every service here, as you can see, every API or every service can use a single database. Microservices allow us to scale, deploy all application or some parts of the application independently. They offer great distributed software challenges, but with these benefits, we cannot always choose microservices because they are intended for large, scalable, and long-term distributed application. Do not underestimate the complexity in implementation and testing. Now we will present the different architecture and patterns of microservices. And this table summarizes the modern patterns and technologies to be used, like containers, for example. There are many models, most of which are linked or come from the domain-driven design. And here we can find Service Fabric. Here, Service Fabric. We talk here about Azure Service Fabric. And our session is about Service Fabric today. Companies face challenges in their passage to the cloud because, for example, there is an optimization of the deployment of microservices to be taken into account. Similarly, achieving reliability consistently of state and data without latency problems, monitoring and governance at global and granular levels, execution of highly secure application on a large scale until integration and continuous developments. We see all of this here. In Microsoft Azure, we have quite few services. We have app services, Service Fabric. We will talk about that today, Kubernetes, container instance, and batches. All these services, we can use them to host and deploy microservices. We have three major services in Azure. There is Service Fabric, which we will see it today in details during our session. It supports microservices developed by any language, and Service Fabric Mesh offers more features intelligent like routing. We also have Azure Kubernetes, which is a container orchestrator containing microservices, easy to manage. And finally, we have Azure Functions, which is a part of services will act according to the triggers. So we have three ways to use services here in Azure. Now we go to Service Fabric. So what's Service Fabric? It allows you to create and manage scalable and reliability application composed of microservices. These distributed microservices run at very high density on a shared pool of virtual machine, which correspond to a cluster. Service Fabric represents the next generation platform for building and managing these cloud-level tiers enterprise application running in containers and work with other providers such as Azure, AWS, or OpenStack, for example. Azure Service Fabric is a distributed system platform that facilitates the packaging, deployment, and managing of scalable and reliable containers and microservices. It also solves the significant problems of developing and managing native cloud applications. Developer and administrator are able to avoid complex infrastructure issues and can focus on implementing strategic and demanding workloads that are scalable, reliable, and easy to manage. We need to understand some things related to the structure here. Service Fabric cluster is a network connected set of virtual machines into which your microservices are deployed and managed. So what is the cluster? The cluster is a set of nodes that are virtual machine. Node numbers depend from the use of clusters. In development phase, one node is used, but in production, you need to have more than 5 to not have any problems of latency. Every node has an operating system. It can be Windows or Linux with a runtime. A node can host multiple applications. It depends from resource available in the virtual machine. Service Fabric can be run anywhere. You can create cluster for Service Fabric in many environments, including Azure or locally, on Windows Server or Linux. You can even create clusters on other public clouds. In addition, the development environment in the SDK is identical to the production environment with no emulator involved. In other words, what run on your local deployments, developments, and deployment cluster is deployed to the cluster of other environments. So no change in configuration. It will be the same in locally and even in production. Service Fabric is an open source project and is used in many Azure infrastructure services as well as other Microsoft services, including Azure Event Hub, as you can see here, Azure Cosmos DB, Azure SQL DB, and here we can see more like Dynamics, Cortana. So here we have all services using Service Fabric. The main subsection of Service Fabric can be seen below. In this diagram, we have the Service Fabric architecture. Each layer has a specific role. We will start by the first one in the bottom. So the transport subsystem is responsible for providing secure communication channels between the nodes of a Service Fabric cluster. The above federation subsystem allows you to logically group physical or virtual nodes in a cluster so that it can be managed as a unit. This helps Service Fabric to perform tasks such as troubleshooting, election, leaders, and routing. The transport subsystems provides communication channels for intra or inter-cluster communication. The federation system, the second one, is responsible for logical grouping of virtual and physical machines to form a Service Fabric cluster. This subsystem uses the communication infrastructure provided by the transport subsystem to achieve this consolidation. If you need more detail about the others, you can find in the end of this presentation the link about official documentation of Microsoft if you need to know more about that. Now we'll talk, we give an overview about monitoring and diagnostics. So as we know, for a developer and administrator, monitoring and diagnostics are critical to developing, testing, and deploying workload in any cloud environments. For example, you can track how your application are used, the action taken by the Service Fabric platform, your resource utilization with performance counters, and the overall health of your cluster. You can use this information to diagnose diagnose and correct issues, and prevent them from occurring in future. The next few sections will briefly explain each area of Service Fabric monitoring to consider for production workloads. Supervision is useful for an application, for the cluster, for the infrastructure, and for other logging solution. Today, we will use Service Fabric Explorer. We find it locally. We will have it locally to monitor our application, and we will use it to deploy our application. We will see that after in our demo. And we can use it in Azure. We find the link in the Azure when we deploy it after we publish our application in the cloud. But if we need more detail about monitoring, we can use Azure monitoring. Here it's more globally, it concerns about your infrastructure, your virtual machine. It's more detailed than the Service Fabric Explorer. Before we start, we must meet these prerequisites in order to be able to configure our Windows development environment to create our Service Fabric. So here, it's really important to have Windows 10, the professional, not the home, the professional enterprise version. If we need to work using Docker after, because we will talk about containers using Service Fabric in the ends. For this instance, we need to install Docker from Windows. It's optional if you will not use the container and Docker tools. We can use Visual Studio 2019 or 17. The important that it can be the last version that support Docker, and .NET Core SDK. To be faster, I recorded this every step about setting up your Windows developments and all demo that we will have today to have more and more demo in faster way. So we will start by setting up Windows development environment to build our Service Fabric. We will find the link to install Visual Studio, the link to install here Visual Studio. So we have 2019. So we can use the community version. It's free to do our test, professional enterprise. And here we have to install the Microsoft Azure Service Fabric SDK. You can find more links if you have Visual Studio 2015, or if you need only to install SDK only one without the using of Visual Studio, because we can use PowerShell after. So here, when we click our SDK, we get Web Platform Installer. Here we will install the first one. The second one is related to Service Mesh. We will not cover this today. So here it takes few minutes to be installed, depends from your machine, from internet. So here we will download the package and it will be installed and configured. We click on finish when we finish it. Now, we will try to verify on Visual Studio if we have, it's okay if we have this. So we will start by creating a project, new projects. We try to do search. It's really simple to search of template. Here we have Service Fabric application. So this is the TIM project template to create Service Fabric application. So we give a name to the project, location. So you have a solution name that we can change it to. And we can choose the framework here. We will choose the last one. We click on create after. And here we can find many services that we can use it. So we can have Stateful on Stateless services. .NET Core, .NET Framework. It's not Core. The containers too here. So we have many templates, many options of services that we can use it. So it depends from your needs and from the project. Today we will create simple services and a .NET Core application. And in the end, the containers.
Hi, Hamida.
Yes.
We're actually unable to see your screen if you're able to share what you're showing.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. I will share again.
Yeah, just the second screen where you're working on the VS Code screen. Yeah, we just got a couple of messages from folks.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
It's okay now?
Yeah, we can see the slides. We just want to see the VS Code where you're.
This one?
Yeah, this part right here. Yeah, if you could maybe do a couple of the last few steps just so they can see that part again.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here, okay, I will go back here. So, because you didn't see that, so here we have links related to install. You will find that in the end. I will share the deck PowerPoints. You can find here the links. So we have the links to install Visual Studio, and you have links to install SDK here. And now we will see here the web platform installer. And we will choose the first one, Microsoft Azure Service Fabric SDK here. And we will click on install here. So we get the web platform installer. So I will go faster here. And here we will open Visual Studio 2019. We just search by the name Fabric, and we will see here a project template of Service Fabric application. We give a name, locations, solution name. And we have a framework. We'll choose the last one as mentioned before. And we click on create here. And here we have the services that we can use it in .NET framework or the old .NET framework. And we have containers too. We have stateful, stateless. We'll talk about that in the end. Today we'll talk only about stateless. So here we have many services. So it depends from your project. We click on create after. So we choose simple services, say stateless, for example, services. Now we'll set up a local service fabric cluster. So we use Visual Studio, but before that, we will search for service fabric local cluster. And in the bottom here, in the menu, here, cluster manager. So we need to run it as administrator. If you are not, we have this icon, service fabric cluster manager. So we need to start local cluster to be able to manage. And service fabric cluster here, when we click on manage local cluster, we will see service fabric explorer. So here I will choose for node, but you can use one node for performance locally. But as we mentioned before, we use more than 5 nodes in production. Here we have Service Fabric Explorer. So here we can find our application that we will deploy it. And as you can see, I choose 5 nodes, but one node is it's okay. You can use only one. And we have many options to monitor and diagnose our application. So here we don't have any application. So we'll try to publish Service Fabric in Visual Studio to be able to see our application in Service Fabric. So we created a serverless service, the first one in the menu, and we just click on Start here. And we will see when we click on Start, we will find our application here. It will be deployed in one or more than a node. It depends from your configuration. We see that after. And as you can see here, we have our application Service Fabric demo. It's a stateless service, the first one. I select the first one. Stateless, as you can see here. We go back to see the application after that. But here we have our nodes. So it's really easy to monitor. We have the service, we have many things here. Now this is the application. So we have two applications. The first one is the Service Fabric, is that what we set it as a default project to launch our application. And the second one is a simple service. It's a console application, simple service. So here we have many XML files. The first one to configure one node, you have 5 nodes. You can add more than nodes. We need that in when we try to publish locally or in the clouds. This file XML file. In our case, we use 5 nodes, and here we can find other settings to configure files to configure our Service Fabric, our application. Now we will build .NET Service Fabric application. It will be simple .NET Core application. So we will publish. We choose not cloud, but we will choose 5 nodes. Because I have 5 nodes, I configured our application to support 5 nodes. Here we have 5 nodes too. And we choose local cluster. We click on publish. 5 nodes too here. And you click on publish. So we are publishing our application in we will see that in Service Fabric Explorer. So we wait for a few seconds to create the cluster, our node, and here we have no application. If we try to refresh, we have our application here, as you can see. Now, so we will not click on start because it's already published. Before we use start to see our application, but when we stop the application, it will disappear from Service Fabric. Now we'll build .NET Service Fabric application. We will use Azure samples. You can find the link at the end of this application. So we will clone from GitHub this one, copy GitHub. This is the link. You will find it in the end of the presentation. I'll use it during this session. So we'll do clone, just clone. We can do fork to use in our GitHub account, so it's up to you. So, and here we find it's a voting application. We will just click on voting SLN to get all the entire application. This is the structure of the content of GitHub. And here we have, as you can see, we have voting data, where this layer can include the data and the web parts. And we have always the voting projects. This is the Service Fabric project. It's always the default project to use before launching our application. So we click on Start. We will compile this solution to be able to not have any problem. We click on Start now. And it's here, as you can see. Now we will verify on Service Fabric Explorer here. As you can see, we have now two applications. The first one that we already published, but the second one we just only started. And we have services, data voting, our project that we have, our maintenance. It's really simple to monitor our application. If you have any problems, for example, here I try to unload one project, so we can see project now. Here, as you can see, we have only one because we shut down our it's not started our application. So to be able to have always our application on Service Fabric Explorer, we need to publish it as we did before, publish locally. We mentioned everything. So here we have the votes, we have the nodes. Here, as you can see, if you have problems, it's red. If no problems, so here we can see it's really simple application to add and delete some votes. Well, if it works, it means that everything is okay. We have the services, so we can add more votes. So as you can see, it's really simple application. It's a template that we can use. It's free on GitHub of the simple of Azure. Now we will deploy the Service Fabric to a cluster in Azure. We click always on voting on the projects. That is Service Fabric, but now we will use Cloud XML, not one node, 5 nodes. And we will click on create a new cluster. Here we define a cluster name. I will give a name, my voting cluster. We choose your subscription. You can choose a location, and we give number of nodes. As I mentioned before, it's better to use 5 and more when you are in production. Here it's better to create a new research group. If you click on create, you get an error because you need to define your certificate, your virtual machine details, as we mentioned before, cluster user virtual machines, and nodes too. So here we have, we need to fill our information. I don't have certificates, but I will give passwords after we will load the certification. We need to fill VM details too. So because when we create Service Fabric, we will create virtual machine behind. So we give password, we confirm the password, we choose your virtual machine image. We have many plan to virtual machine size. It depends from the price and the performance that you need of your applications. So many things to define before publishing your Service Fabric on Azure. So we will did the search after using the research group. It will be easier to see all things created to create our Service Fabric deployments. So here we use, as you can see, Visual Studio. It's really simple. The tools are really simple, but you can use Azure directly without Visual Studio. If you use Visual Studio Code, so you can use Azure CLI, for example. It's the same thing. Here, it's very simple to click the benefits of some tools in Visual Studio. To be able to, here, as you can see, it takes a few times, so you need to see if it's read or not. So we will try to see our research. I make search using research group, as I said, voting a research group. Here, as you can see, we have many components, many things created. I come back to Visual Studio to be able to see if really we finish it publishing. We need to have red sign here. yes, it's okay now. So it's okay. Here we have many things to be able to verify them. So here we go back to my voting cluster. Here we have the link of Service Fabric Explorer here. We have our nodes. So we click on publish to be sure it's okay. So it's okay, everything is okay. So we click only publish to get the application published in Service Fabric. We will have a link to see the application too. It will be deployed as app services. Here, so we have many things. As you can see here, it's okay. Now we go back to see Service Fabric Explorer. And we have the second link. So I didn't add the certificate, but it's okay to use HTTPS. Here we have the application. And this is the link to monitor our application, but you can still use the Azure Monitor to have more detail about your VMs, your infrastructure, your application. So now we'll see our application. The link, this one, okay, and we will try to test if our .NET application working or not. Yes, okay, it's working. So it seems okay. So it's deployed and it seems working without any problems, as you can see. So it's really simple. Now we will see how we can execute Docker container in Service Fabric. So Docker container, I think that you have any idea about it. So sorry. So Docker container, we can use them in, I will come back because I have some problems, sorry for that. So as you can see here in these pictures, containers, we can use them if you want to do any lift and shift of old applications. So we can use them without any modification. So for these reasons, we have the on-premises. We can just use them in locally on using a Windows server. You can install Docker container to deploy our images. We can rehost on Azure or another provider, and we can use microservices. Is what we presented today. Microservices if we want to re-architect our application and use the benefits of the clouds. So here we talk existing or new application, lift and shift, container, and microservices. Now we'll build and execute Docker container in using Service Fabric. We go back to Visual Studio. So we will create. We will look for Fabric, Service Fabric templates. And we add a name. We did the same step like before, but now we'll choose a container here. So here we give a name, and what is specific in Service Fabric here that we need to get image name. So we need to have at least a project use an image in Docker Hub. I have created before a project, just we get here, as you can see, we have Docker desktop that is already started. And I will just try to copy the link of the images. You can find more images of .NET Core, free images that you can use it if you don't have any projects using Docker before. So we give a username. So if you get Docker .NET Core free, you don't have to add username. So here we need this information. So we click on create. In this project, we will have this image in configuration. the configuration file, as we will see that. So we have projects, create project, and as you can see here, we have the image name, the link of our image name. It can be the local name or local image or online image. So it's something related to some configuration. So we just finished it. So this is one. We finished our demo. I will try to share again. Share again. I don't know if you can see my screen. Now I don't know if you see my screen. Now we will go to talk about stateless service and stateful service. When we see Visual Studio 2019, we have many type of services. So today we just covered the stateless services. We didn't talk more in detail about stateful services, but in these pictures here, we can see in the schema here, we have stateful services. You can see the difference between them. What is recommended to use is stateful services because it's more optimized, and every service use stateful middle tiers computer here. As you can see, it's easy if you have many countries for application that it's like, for example, Netflix that is used in many countries, so it's better to use stateful services. Today we give it an overview about microservices and the difference between monolithic and microservices. And as we said before, that's it's not applied always in any project. It's not always for any project. Microservices are used when we have many domains to manage, and it will be optimized in tests and implementation. It's not easy to create tests for microservices. We give it an introduction about Service Fabric and the architecture. We can see more detail in the end. I will show you some links, but if you have more details. We prepared the environment to do demo, to set up a local Service Fabric cluster, to create Service Fabric using Visual Studio, to publish Service Fabric in Visual Studio. As I said before, we can use Visual Studio Code and Azure CLI. So to deploy our the Service Fabric, but it will be simple to use Visual Studio, the tools to publish. Overview about monitoring and diagnostics. We use it today, Service Fabric Explorer. We try to clone a simple Azure.NET application to see how we can deploy it to a cluster in Azure using nodes and virtual machines, and we build and execute Docker containers in Service Fabric. Here we can find some references. We have this LinkedIn. You can, if it's in French, but it's really interesting to see it. And we have all links that we use today. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Amazing. Thanks, Hamida. We have a few questions in the Q&A section.
Okay. Okay. Authorization. Why should we do authorization and authorization? The API gateway of each API gateway does not need to remain insecure. About the we have Gopal. You asked about giving authorization to API gateway. I think it's when we try to deploy in Azure. It's really important, yes, to secure our API gateway. Yes, we need to use HTTPS if you want to use Service Fabric Explorer. I don't know. I understand it. It's that the questions you can ask me too. Okay, this is about the screen. If user Service Fabric, do we still need Kubernetes? We can use Kubernetes with Docker as orchestrator, but for Service Fabric, we don't need to use Kubernetes. They are not. We can use it together. So as we explained it before here in our PowerPoint, I go back. It's not a problem here. Here we have many options. Here we can use Azure Service Fabric, Azure Service Fabric Mesh here in the first one. And if we need to container as a service, here we talk about Azure Container Instance and Azure Kubernetes for Orchestrator. Or we can use Azure Functions too. So we can combine them together. How does Service Fabric compare with Azure Kubernetes Managed Services? It depends from, so there are two different solutions. So it depends from your needs. As we said before, so if you have very big, large application, we can use it. I don't have any preference to use Service Fabric or Kubernetes and containers. So it depends from your architecture, it's a technological choice in the company, or I don't have any preference. So every solution has advantages and inconvenience. I don't know if you have any other questions. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think no questions.
I see a few more. One says, if we use Azure Service Fabric, do we still need Kubernetes?
I answered about that. I said.
Oh, you said that. Okay.
But yes, I explained that. Yes.
All right, awesome. And I think there's two more.
Yes.
Have you touched on those as well? All right, awesome. Well, in that case, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to share one slide that has a survey link. If you could take a look. Here, I'll just share that. Yeah, we really appreciate if you could take this survey. It helps us do more events like this. I've posted the link in the comments as well, and it gives us great feedback on how to improve and create better content for attendees. So if you have any feedback, please do submit that on that survey, and the code for the survey is 8060. And then we'll be sharing all this content from today on our YouTube channel, and I'll post a link in the meetup group as well, so you can take a look. And we'll have the recording so you can follow along. And if you have any questions and you want to stay tuned with other workshops that are coming up, but even the ones that are happening in your time zone, this event was for the Toronto time zone, but if you are based anywhere else, you can check out some of our other meetup locations. And yeah, thank you so much for following along. And if you have any more questions, please submit them in the survey or just in this chat, and I'll let Rebai know. And I think, Rebai, you had a bunch of links to your personal channels as well where people could reach out. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.